When hundreds of grizzly bears began walking down a highway in Yellowstone, authorities were prepared for panic, destruction, even violence. But what happened next? No one was ready for it. This is not a fairy tale. It's a real story of nature, survival, and a moment that changed how people see animals forever. Get ready for a powerful journey that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about fear, instinct, and compassion. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. It helps us bring you more real, emotional stories like this one. It started with a phone call to the ranger station at 6:12 a.m. "There's a bear on Highway 89, the caller said. "He's just standing there, not moving, not crossing, just standing alone." It was early spring, the snow barely melting off the high passes. Wildlife sightings weren't unusual in Yellowstone. In fact, they were expected. But this one felt different. Ranger Dana Hull took the call. She was 42, level-headed, and not easily rattled. She had handled wildfires, floods, even a cougar in a schoolyard. But something in the caller's voice, the uneasiness, made her step outside the station and scan the mountains. Then came a second call. Then a third. By 6:45 a.m., traffic had backed up for nearly a mile, not because of one bear, but because of dozens, and they weren't just wandering, they were walking together. Grizzly bears, adult males, females, and even cubs were descending from the northern range, not into the forest, but down the slope onto the road, not crossing it, claiming it. Drivers stayed in their cars, engines off, doors locked, not out of malice but fear. A local delivery driver, Thomas Reyes, filmed it from his dashboard. At first, his camera caught a single silhouette moving through the mist, then 2, then 10. By the time the video hit social media, it showed over 50 bears walking shoulder to shoulder along the highway like they had been doing it for generations. By 9:00 a.m., the footage had gone viral. Bears 89 Yellowstone Standoff Nature. His talking news vans arrived by noon, helicopters hovered overhead, and still they kept coming. By the end of the first day, 147 bears had gathered. Park rangers had never seen anything like it. No migration patterns could explain it. No natural disaster. No fire. No shortage of food. They had come with purpose, but no one knew what it was. Dana stood at the barricade, binoculars shaking in her hands as the grizzlies slowly lay down in the middle of the road. Some curled beside each other. Some pressed their snouts to the pavement like they were listening, and none of them, not one, acted aggressively. The park's bear biologist, Dr. Leon Vickers, flew in from Bozeman that night. When he arrived, he asked Dana what she thought was going on. She didn't answer right away. She was still watching a mother grizzly gently lick the paw of a limping cub. "They're not lost," she said quietly. "They're waiting for us to listen." The military was notified. So, FOI, the Department of the Interior. But even then, no one was ready for what came next because this wasn't a protest. It wasn't an escape. It was something else. Something deeper. And the world was finally watching. By the second day, the highway had been closed in both directions. More than 200 grizzly bears now lay across the asphalt and surrounding hillsides, not in chaos, but in perfect silence. There had been no growls, no charges, no attacks. In fact, there was something unnerving about how peaceful they were. Park rangers stood with binoculars and tranquilizer rifles they never used. Helicopters circled above but kept their distance, not for safety, but because someone noticed that when the blades got too close, the bears would look up in unison like they were asking, "Are you done yet?" Social media boiled with theories. Apocalypse warning, animal revolution, earthquake coming. Bears are smarter than we thought. But on the ground, things felt different. Ranger Dana Holt sat in the back of a service truck watching a live feed from a drone. She zoomed in on a group of 6 bears lying around an abandoned picnic table at the edge of a rest stop. A mother bear was grooming her cub. Another was sniffing gently at a faded photo nailed to a roadside cross, a memorial left by a family who had lost someone there years ago. They weren't angry, they were mourning, or maybe remembering. The Forest Service sent a negotiator. Not for the bears, for the people. The pressure was growing. Truckers needed to pass. Tourists were rerouting in outrage. Politicians were calling for removal, lethal if necessary. That word lethal made Dana's stomach turn. These bears, she told Dr. Vickers, aren't acting like wild animals. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on a screen. They're not acting wild, he said. They're acting deliberate. On the afternoon of the third day, something changed. A child, maybe 5 years old, had wandered from a family car during a lull in ranger surveillance. His parents screamed. The crowd gasped. He ran straight toward the bears, but the bears didn't move. One, an enormous male with a silver scar over his muzzle, rose to his feet. Everyone tensed, but instead of charging, he lowered himself slowly and sat in the child's path. The boy stopped, frozen. Tears streaked his cheeks. The bear just looked at him. Then, to the shock of the world, the boy walked forward and touched its paw. Not a sound, not a growl, just breath and heartbeat and presence. Rangers retrieved the child gently. The bear never moved. The footage hit the internet that night. It reached 18 million views in 24 hours, and suddenly the world stopped seeing a threat. They started seeing a message, not of dominance, not of protest, but of something we'd long forgotten to notice. Stillness, silence, respect. And for the first time, people didn't ask how to remove the bears. They asked what it would take to deserve their presence. By day 4, the silence had changed. It wasn't just stillness anymore. It was pattern. Rangers began to notice small things, bears walking to specific spots and sitting in identical positions, others gathering around signs, trash bins, and roadside shrines as if drawn to places touched by human emotion. It was subtle at first, but then it became undeniable. At mile marker 127, 3 bears surrounded a wooden cross at the base of a tree. They didn't sniff it or tear it down. They just sat facing it, heads bowed slightly for hours. At mile marker 132, another group nudged aside garbage cans, not rummaging, but removing debris and scattering wild flowers pulled from the edge of the forest across the ground. The footage stunned viewers. A park historian whispered on a live broadcast there, honoring the road. Dr. Leon Vickers, now the face of the Park Service's response team, released a quiet statement. These bears are not displaced. They are not starving. They are not confused. They are acting with intention. And we are not here to interpret it, only to witness it. Every major network set up on site. Reporters didn't know what to say anymore. There were no confrontations, no accidents, just a slow, deliberate expression of presence. Then something happened at dusk. A ranger named Marcus saw it first. He had returned to his post after a break. Walking slowly past the barricades, he noticed a patch of earth that had been disturbed, freshly dug, claw marks, and at the center a single object, a plastic water bottle half buried, wrapped in wild grass and pine branches, as if placed there intentionally. It was the exact brand used in a viral cleanup campaign launched months earlier in Yellowstone, a campaign about human waste and respect. The bear hadn't crushed it. It had buried it symbolically. That night, the road was bathed in silver moonlight. Dozens of bears gathered near a curve known for frequent accidents. One by one, they lay down facing the cliff, watching the valley below. It wasn't random. It looked like a vigil. Rangers sat in silence. Spectators cried. "This isn't a protest," Dana whispered to a local filmmaker. "This is grief. Not just for other bears, but maybe for us too." Children began leaving hand-drawn signs at the barricades. Messages like, "We're sorry," "We'll do better," "Thank you for waiting." One child left a teddy bear. The next morning, a real bear was seen lying beside it, not chewing it, just resting with it. And something began to shift. The crowd got quieter. The cameras turned off earlier. People stayed longer, but spoke less. The bears hadn't moved a mile, but the people had. It started with a press release at 8:00 a.m. The National Park Service, in coordination with federal authorities, will begin non-lethal bear relocation procedures as of 10:00 a.m. today. The language was clinical, but the message was clear. They were coming to move the bears by force if necessary. Dana Hull was the first to respond. She slammed the statement on the desk of the interim director and said, "You don't understand what this will do." The director didn't flinch. "I understand exactly. We've got trucks waiting in Bozeman, 0 tourists stuck in detours, and Washington breathing down my neck. These bears haven't hurt a single soul." Dana said, "They're trying to tell us something." He didn't even look up. They've had their moment. It's time to clear the road. At 10:06 a.m., the first convoy rolled in. 3 helicopters overhead, 2 wildlife containment trucks, 12 men in uniforms. And behind them, a wall of people, volunteers, park rangers, even families holding signs. "Let them stay. This is their land. Respect the silence." The helicopters drew closer, engines roaring low. That's when the bears stood. All of them. From every ridge, every shoulder, every curve of the highway, hundreds of grizzly bears rose to their feet in silent unison. The sound of the rotors faltered. One ranger dropped his tranquilizer rifle and whispered, "They're not threatening us, they're warning us." A hush fell over the entire valley, and then a sound no one expected, a voice not from the bears, from the crowd. A young girl, maybe 6, stepped past the barricade. Her name was Rosie. She had been there for days with her mother. She held a drawing in her hand, a bear holding hands with a ranger. She walked toward the road and knelt in the grass. The bears didn't move. She laid the drawing down on the pavement and stepped back. One of the larger bears, the silver-muzzled male, lumbered forward. He paused, sniffed the paper. Then, in front of dozens of cameras, he lay down beside it peacefully, quietly, and behind him the others followed. One by one, the bears returned to the ground, resuming their positions in absolute silence. The helicopters backed off. The trucks turned around, and the officials had no choice. The world had chosen a side, and it wasn't the one with force. That evening, the footage played across every major news network. But it wasn't the confrontation they showed. It was the girl, the bear, the drawing, and the impossible moment of trust that stopped a Zerob creature from rising in defense. Instead, he lay down in faith. Dr. Vickers called it a sacred turning point in human history. Dana called it something simpler, a moment we didn't deserve but were given anyway. No one knew who made the first call, but within 48 hours, everything had changed. The Department of the Interior announced a pause on all relocation activity. Local government officials began holding listening circles, not press briefings, on the edges of the park. And the barricades, they didn't move. But the people behind them did. What was once a chaotic crush of media and gawkers had become a quiet gathering of citizens. People bringing thermoses of tea, folding chairs, guitars. At sunrise, they would sit in silence and watch the bears as if attending a service. One artist began sketching the bears, offering prints in exchange for donations to wildlife preservation. Another family built a small wooden sign beside the highway that read, "We'll stay as long as you do." The bears remained, but their behavior shifted. They weren't guarding anymore. They were sharing. Some wandered closer to the road's edge where rangers had laid out mineral-rich soil and water basins, not as bait, but as offerings of respect, and the bears accepted. There was no growling, no scavenging, just coexistence, like both species had reached some unspoken treaty. Dr. Vickers submitted a formal proposal to Congress. He titled it the Yellowstone Accord, a new model for human-wildlife reciprocity. His voice cracked on national TV when he explained it. "We are no longer caretakers, we are neighbors, and they came down the mountain to remind us of that." Across the country, something remarkable happened. In California, a school of second graders planted a bear garden with wild flowers native to Yellowstone. In New York, a subway platform was covered in bear murals with the words, "Silence deserves space." On the 5th week of the standstill, Rosie, the little girl with the drawing, was invited to speak at a community event in Gardner, just outside the park. She stood on a makeshift stage in front of hundreds. She didn't say much, just held up another drawing. This one showed a bear, a girl, and a road between them covered in flowers. The crowd stood in silence, and so did the bears, watching from the hillside. No ranger gave the signal. No law declared the road reopened. But one morning, as dawn broke over the ridgeline, the bears began to leave. Not all at once, in groups, in families. The silver-muzzled male looked back once, just like they always said bears didn't do, but he did. He looked at the people behind the barricades, at the girl holding flowers, and then he turned and vanished into the trees. Dana Hull watched through binoculars. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered, "They came down not to stop us, but to teach us how to walk forward. The CBA." The road was open again. No police tape, no announcement, just a quiet morning, a clear sky, and the wind brushing wild flowers planted where paw prints had once covered the asphalt. Traffic was allowed in sections at low speeds. No honking, no idling. Rangers guided cars past memorial signs and hand-painted murals that children had created. All of them tributes to the bears who had waited and taught. Yellowstone wasn't the same, and no one wanted it to be. At the mile 127 Memorial Cross, someone had built a wooden bench. It wasn't signed, just carved with a simple inscription. "We heard you." Visitors came from all over, not to hike, not to camp, but just to sit. Sit and watch. Sit and remember. Some left feathers, others left drawings. Many just sat in silence. That bench became known as the listening place. In Bozeman, the state legislature passed the Wildlife Awareness Act, the first of its kind to protect natural animal behavior as a form of environmental expression. Across the country, city schools launched a new subject, Wild Ethics, a class that taught not only animal behavior, but also what it meant to be present, patient, and humble in the face of the wild. Even tourism changed. Guided silence walks became the most requested activity in Yellowstone. Hour-long hikes where visitors weren't allowed to speak, just walk and listen. And Rosie, she didn't become famous. Her parents never wanted that. But her drawings were displayed in a traveling exhibit called When the Wild Waited. It toured 27 cities. Each stop raised funds for bear habitat restoration and environmental education. In one video clip, Rosie is seen standing in front of her drawing, the bear, the girl, and the flower-covered road holding a pine cone in her hands. A reporter asked her, "Why do you think the bears did it?" She shrugged, smiled, and said, "Because they didn't know how to talk, so they waited until we listened." Back in the park, Dana Hull stood on the ridge near the spot where the silver-muzzled bear had last been seen. It had been almost a year. She carried no weapon, no radio, just her boots, her breath, and a scarf Rosie had drawn bears on. She sat, waited, and though no bear came that day, she didn't leave disappointed because this time she was the one listening. There was no ending to the story. Not really. The bears had left, but what they brought stayed. A new kind of reverence. A new way of being human. A reminder that the world wasn't just meant to be observed, but respected. A year to the day. It was a quiet morning in Yellowstone. No crowds, no reporters, no helicopters, just the forest breathing. Just the wind moving through tall grass like a whisper passed from tree to tree. Ranger Dana Hull drove slowly down Highway 89, now renamed the Path of Silence. Not officially, but that's what everyone called it. She parked near mile marker 132, the place where the bear had once buried the plastic bottle beneath wild flowers. It was still there, not the bottle, but the flowers. Every spring, someone replanted them. No one ever claimed credit, and no one needed to. Some stories, Dana thought, didn't need to be retold. They just needed to be respected. Farther down the road, a new stone had been placed in the ground. Not a monument, a marker, simple, gray, carved with a single line. They stopped for us so we could learn how to stop for them. Tourists still came, but they whispered now. Children held their parents' hands tighter when passing the glades. Some left drawings, others left pine cones, and always someone listened. One evening, Rosie returned, now a little older, her hair longer, her drawings more complex. She didn't go to the barricade this time. She went into the woods, just a few steps, sat on a fallen log, and waited. She wasn't hoping to see a bear. She was honoring one. She pulled out a folded page from her coat, the same one she had placed at the bear's feet a year earlier. The crayon lines were faded, but still there, a bear and a girl holding hands. She placed it on the forest floor, held a pine cone against her heart, and said quietly, "I remember you." A breeze moved through the trees. The forest stayed still. And somewhere, not far, not close, but present, a low, steady breath moved through the underbrush. Not a growl, not a warning, just existence, like the earth had exhaled with her, like the memory hadn't ended, only changed shape. Back on the highway, Dana walked the shoulder alone. She looked down at the fresh tracks in the mud. Not tire marks, paw prints, still large, still steady. Heading east, no destination, just movement, just life. And as she followed them for a while, she smiled and whispered to the wind, "Thank you for waiting. If this story made you feel something, hold on to it, share it, because sometimes the most powerful message doesn't come from words, but from stillness." Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and tell someone you care about to watch this. Let's walk forward with gentleness, with love, and with listening hearts.